Good morning, everyone. Hope you're all having a wonderful day today. Today, we're going to be talking about some of the best budget barrels on the market. They're more mid-range in terms of performance for a very, very good price. But before we get into the video, if you'd like to help out the channel in any way, you can, of course, like, share, and subscribe. All that sort of stuff is free and really helps me out. You can also comment down below, comment literally anything, and that will help me out in the YouTube algorithm. On top of that, if you want to support me financially, there's both Subscribestar, and I also have my own business where I manufacture AR500 steel plates. That's all actually restocked. I have everything back up on the website with some additional packages and stuff on there. So free shipping on everything, and we ship to anywhere in the US. So with that out of the way, full disclosure, I did buy both of these barrels myself. I bought both of them from Primary Arms several months ago. I bought the 10.5 when it went on sale for $99, which was an excellent price, one of the cheapest barrels I could find actually. And then the 12.5 the next week went on sale for $104. So I ended up picking up both barrels for about $205, about a week apart from each other. Wasn't really intending on picking up new barrels, but when I saw them for that price, I basically had to pick them up. So now both of the barrels are 4150 carbon steel, which is a very, very good, very durable barrel steel. They're both carbine length gas systems, and a really silly thing that Rosco puts on their website is that their gas port sizes are proprietary. However, they're in the low .070 range, so whether that's .072 or .074, it's going to be in that range because it is something that you can physically see and check. School of the American Rifle pin gauged the 10.5 at .072, and I'm guessing the 12.5 is fairly similar. If I haven't mentioned it already, they are both finished with a black nitride, very, very good finish. It's very, very even all the way through. On top of that, the barrel extension is also nitrided. I do want to say that this is somewhat subjective, but sometimes on more inexpensive barrels, the finish machining work, especially on the barrel extension, is not particularly good. However, both of these from the factory, very, very smooth. Everything was well-rounded inside of the barrel extension. So whatever their finishing, dehorning process, whatever it is that they're doing at the end is really, really good and works very, very well for these barrels. So now with that out of the way, there's really only a couple things that, for me anyways, outside of just the basic specs, material, length, gas system, all that sort of stuff, there's only a couple things that really matter to me personally. And that's going to be reliability. Basically, your barrel runs your entire system because it is a DI gun. So how much gas is it putting back into the system? Is it putting enough to run it? Is it running smoothly? Is it running too harsh? And then accuracy. So let's go ahead and talk about the first thing. Now, as I mentioned, the gas port size on the 10.5 is around the .072, which is very, very small. A lot of other manufacturers, very cheap barrels, like this one here is a 416R stainless steel one. This has a .093 gas block, or gas port size. A lot of Bear Creek Arsenal barrels are .093 for their 10.5s and so on, which is about 30% larger than the gas port sizes on the Rosco. And they are very, very noticeably different. Even if you just eyeball them, you can tell that one is quite a bit more, putting quite a bit more gas into the system. That being said, these Roscos are still slightly over gas. I think the Geisley gas port size on their 10.5s is like .067, so about 10% less overall gas coming back into the system. These ones will eject steel case and any sort of lower power ammunition at about 330, but anything hot like M193 or M855, they're going to be sending those forward at around 2 o'clock. So they're a little more pushy, a little more snappy than like the top tier perfectly gassed barrels. But according to Rosco's website, these are supposed to be, bless you. According to Rosco's website, these are supposed to be basically do anything barrels, and they're supposed to just work and work and work. And so reliability has been 100% on both of these builds. I have combined probably around 2,000 rounds on both of these guns. And again, the only small downside to their function is that they are just a little bit overgassed. Now, not violently overgassed like a lot of more budget barrels or cheaper rifles that are going to be pushing a lot more aggressively than they should, especially for 5.56. 5.56, when it's well gassed, basically has no recoil, and these just have slightly more than that. So they could definitely make the gas port sizes a little bit smaller and get it a little bit softer, but when you're a barrel manufacturer and you want these barrels to run, that's a good point. But when you're a manufacturer and you're selling these barrels as individuals, now I know that they also sell them in the sauce pack, which is barrel plus bolt carrier group, and then they also have their own uppers. But when you're selling a lot of just the barrels, just strictly the barrels, and you don't know how people are putting them together, what bolt carrier groups they're using, what buffers, all that sort of stuff, it is a good idea to be a little bit on the safe side in terms of gassing versus if you're Geisley and you're building, you know, everything basically on your upper receiver, you can tune that upper receiver to be as soft as you want it to be. Now, talking about the buffers, the buffer systems in both are identical. It's a Strike Industries flat wire recoil spring with an H2 buffer. I like H2 buffers just because they, generally speaking, slow down the recoil impulse. They make it a little bit softer. However, they're generally there to fix a problem. You can run a carbine system on a well-gassed rifle and you're not going to have any issues with it whatsoever. If you have to add a heavier buffer to something, you're trying to fix a problem that's there. You're not solving the root cause of the problem. You're trying to minimize the problem, if that makes sense. With that out of the way, I do want to say that, you know, these are still 5.56 guns. You can still shoot them incredibly fast. And again, they're very, very good, just not top tier in terms of their gassing. They're a little bit more punchy than they should be. Now, that being said, I also did run them suppressed. Now, this is a Form 1 suppressor. This is my ATF approved homemade suppressor. It is a very simple 7-stack or 8-stack baffle design. They're just simple cone baffles. So this does give you a lot of back pressure. However, it's a 30 caliber can, actually like a .340. So on 5.56, it does not give you a ton of back pressure, but I have run these guns both suppressed quite a bit, about half suppressed, half unsuppressed. And this is where you could definitely tune down the gas a little bit more if you're going to be running them as a dedicated suppressed upper. So this upper receiver here actually does have a adjustable gas block on it, and it is actually tuned currently for suppressed shooting. So it shoots very, very soft, and you can shoot very, very quickly with it with very, very little recoil. However, if I'm running lighter ammunition in it, like Wolf or anything steel cased, it's probably not going to cycle in this right now the way it's tuned to run with the suppressor. However, that's just how I've tuned it right now, just kind of testing it out. You can also, of course, throw in an adjustable gas block. Now, what that does is that adds another failure point in your rifle. It does add a little bit more complexity, so that is a big downside, especially if you plan on using an upper receiver for long periods of time, say 5, 10, 15, 20,000 rounds. There was a barrel that got sent to the School of the American Rifle. I've referenced his video a couple times. I'll link it down in the description. Basically, he does a teardown of a Rosco 10.5 Bloodline Barrel, which is what these are. This one's the 10.5, this one's the 12.5, and the 10.5 started to lose accuracy at about 26,000 rounds. Most of us will never reach that point. However, if you are somebody who has that access to that much ammo and that much time to shoot that much, you can rest assured that your barrel is going to last quite a long time. So all of that covers the build quality, which is exceptional, the reliability, which is again has been perfect, the function, which is again a little bit more pushy, a little bit over gas, so you are going to get a little bit more gas back in your face if you're using a suppressor and you're not tuning it. So again, there are some pros and cons to these barrels. They're not perfect barrels. However, when you talk about in terms of value, again, probably the best value on the market right now. But the second major component to any gun or any barrel is going to be the accuracy, because of course it can be 100% reliable, but if it can't hit what you're shooting at, then it doesn't really matter that it can shoot. So I did bring paper today, and I will actually roll in the B-roll of me getting these groups. A little bit of housekeeping before we get to that, though. I do want to say that both of these guns were tested in identical, or both of these uppers were tested in identical configurations. We were using this lower right here, which again, a Strike Industries flat wire recoil spring, H2 buffer. It also has an MBT 2-stage trigger in it, which is very nice. I'll go ahead and ghost that for you guys. So we have a very simple, nice take up, and then you hit a very hard, very defined wall, and then just a click with barely any over travel. Longer reset, but it's a 2-stage trigger, so that doesn't really bug me. Again, a very smooth take up, and then you hit like a 4.5 pound total pull for a very smooth break. And the optic that I used for both upper receivers is this Vortex Viper PST Gen 2 1:6. I used it in this Warren 193 mount for both upper receivers. The groups were shot at 50 yards. The reason I shoot at 50 yards most of the time is to take more of me out of the equation. Also, since I wasn't using super high powered glass, I didn't want to have more margin of error that I add into the equation. Again, shooting at 50 yards from the prone position, I had a Caldwell tripod attached to the front of the gun and then a sandbag for the rear. So very, very stable with a very good trigger. And again, they're both tested in identical configurations. So with that out of the way, we can start our first group. I tested 7 different loads in the exact same order for both guns, so 35 rounds, 36 rounds over a 20-minute period. So by the end, the barrels were warm, however, not all that warm again, 35 rounds in about 20 minutes. So the first group that we shot, which was actually a 6-shot group, the first round was kind of just a fouling shot because I did clean the barrels before the beginning of the groups. I didn't clean them in between the groups, but at the beginning I cleaned both barrels, ran a bore snake down it twice. So the first shot was a 6-shot group on both of them with the 55 grain brown bear ammunition. Shot at 1.259 inches at 50 yards. So again, that's about 2.5 MOA, which isn't that bad. Then we move up to Hornady M193. This is just their 55 grain. It's Hornady / Frontier, so Hornady bullets, Frontier cases. Shot at 0.664 inches, which is again about 1.25 MOA at 100 yards. So that is very, very good, especially for just 55 grain ball ammunition. That is my go-to ammunition. That's what I keep in my home defense magazines, and I also stockpiled quite a bit of it up. So very happy to see that it performs very well with that ammunition. We then moved over to M855, which is generally a very poor in terms of accuracy. 62 grain, you have a steel core in there as well, so you have a lot of different materials, so it's not the most stable projectile. Shot at 1.130 inches at 50 yards. That's about, again, 2.25 MOA group. Then we had 62 grain reloads. Now this 62 grain projectile is just a full metal jacket, does not have a steel core, so it's just a standard 62 grain projectile. Shot at 0.853, and these were reloaded on a progressive press that I did just really, really quickly, so that's pretty good, about 1.5 MOA. Moving down here to my 69 grain reloaded ammunition. This was a 69 grain match load from RMR Bullets, so their bullets, which I bought for like 14 cents each, which is pretty good. And then we got into our match ammunition. Now the best group that I shot all day was with IMI 77 grain Razor Core ammunition, which was not excellent in a lot of guns that I tested, but it performed really, really well in this one, shooting a 5-shot group at 0.432 inches or just under 1 MOA at 100 yards. Very, very good. And then moving on to some PPU 75 grain, their match 223 loading, shot at just under 3/4 inch at 50 yards. So again, about 1.5 MOA. Now what that means to me is that this upper receiver will basically shoot anything that you put through it between 1 and 2 MOA, which is excellent. Again, 7 different loadings. The average is about 1.5 MOA, and with ammunition that it really, really likes, on a good day, you're gonna be looking at under an MOA. So now, of course, we are just dealing with a 12.5 inch barrel, which does not have a ton of velocity. However, it is very nice to know that basically whatever you put through this thing is gonna be shooting between 1 and 2 MOA, and a load that it really likes on a really good day is going to be shooting under 1 MOA. Now, and even with the 55 grain Hornady, just the M193 ammunition, shooting at about 1.25 MOA is awesome to see, because again, I have a ton of that stuff stored up and I shoot a lot of it. And now moving on to the 10.5 inch barreled upper receiver, starting out with, again, the 55 grain brown bear ammunition, shot at about 1.7 inches, so about 3.5 MOA. And then again, coming up to the 55 grain Hornady ammunition, coming in at 0.651 for a 5-shot group, again, shooting very, very well. Now moving down to the M855, we have just over 2 inches with a lot of vertical stringing. Again, M855, not a great round in general for a lot of things, really, when you think about it. Moving down to my 62 grain reloads, shooting at just over an inch. My 69 grain reloads also shooting just over an inch. And the 2 match loads shooting okay at just under an inch, again at 50 yards. That's a little bit under 2 MOA. So overall, this 10.5 upper receiver was shooting at an average of about 2 MOA with most ammunition. with the M193 shooting about 1.5. Because I shoot M193 quite a bit and I have a lot of that Hornady stuff stocked up, I am very, very pleased with both of these uppers' performance with that ammunition. And this one here, the 12.5-inch barrel, does seem to prefer the heavier loads a little bit more. These are both 1-in-7 twist barrels. So again, this one, the accuracy was fairly average, I would say, for whatever reason. Could be to do something with the upper receiver, bolt carrier group or something, or just that day, because I did shoot this upper second, so it could be something going on there. So now that we're done with the two major components, the accuracy is good to excellent on these barrels with most loadings, and I'm sure you could find loads that they really, really like and do a really good job with. The shooting dynamics are very good, if not quite perfect, just a tad too much gas. If I had to give one barrel the upper edge, it would be the 12.5. I tend to enjoy shooting it more. It feels subjectively a little bit softer, even though they're using a very similar gas port size. Just the way it functions for me, the way, you know, you can have a little bit longer of a hand guard on there without covering up your muzzle device. I should note that when I'm not shooting them suppressed, I basically always use an A2 flash hider, just because it does a good job of compensating for their upper recoil, and it also does a really good job of hiding the flash most of the time. Shooting them both suppressed, this one here, even though it was ejecting very forward, was still very, very soft. Depending on the ammunition I was using, like M855 with a suppressor on it, I would get a lot of gas blowback, but if I wasn't using that, if I was using softer ammunition, so again, gas blowback is going to be dependent on quite a few things: your bolt carrier group, your charging handle, what ammunition you're using that day, your buffer and spring setup, all that sort of stuff. But subjectively, the 12.5, this one here is probably currently my favorite upper receiver, just because it's a little bit longer than 10.5, gives you a little bit more real estate, and in my opinion feels very, very soft. The 10.5 is still very, very cool, and I like how short it is. I like how wieldable it is, because 10.5 is an awesome barrel length for most things. I think if you're going to get into an argument about 10.5 versus 11.5 versus 12.5, I think that's fairly lame, as they're all really, really good and do basically the exact same things. The 12.5 is going to give you a little bit more velocity, the 11.5 is going to be a mix, and the 10.5 is going to be the shortest that you should go most of the time in a 5.56. That's really about it for the video, guys. I hope you all enjoyed this. Like I said, for the money right now, these are some of the cheapest barrels on the market, especially if you can get them on a good deal. Anywhere from $100 to $130 is a really, really good price on barrels right now. If you can find their 11.5s,
He loves you.
if you can find their 11.5 and 12.5 barrels in stock, I would pick those up first. And then, but if you need a 10.5, their 10.5s do of course work. Very, very functional. Just again, just a little bit more gas, although I probably said that about 100 times now. So that's about it for the video, guys. I hope you all enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace off. All right.